1, 2. Simkin. Who hates Simkin? She hates Simkin. He hates Simkin. I hate Simkin. You hate Simkin. She hates Simkin. We hate Simkin. Who hates Simkin? I hate Simkin. They hate Simkin.
Hello, and welcome to the I Hate Simkin podcast. Did you know that's what it was called?
No, I like the name though.
Yeah, it's a great name, and I'm really excited today because I've got a guest who I've known for certainly most of my professional life, and a bit of a legend, if I can say that. None other than Ralph James. Hello, Ralph.
I hate Simkin.
Good. That's a requirement of coming on the podcast. I first was aware of Ralph probably about 30 years ago when I was first starting in the music business because he was an agent and still is, and had so many clients who really wanted to work with him. And I've been lucky enough to have a number of clients who have worked with Ralph over the years. But his career in the music business certainly predates my involvement with him because Ralph was also, it still is, I guess, a musician, was in a band called Harlequin, who I remember really well because when I was in high school, Harlequin was one of those bands who would always be on that sort of tour circuit with, it's like 8 or 9 bands who always seemed to be touring together, like Headpins, Harlequin, Toronto, Street Heart,
April Wine.
So you'd go and see a band and usually, it would be some combination of those bands. So I think I must have seen you at the Commodore. No, at the Coliseum.
We did play the Coliseum with April Wine.
I was there.
If my memory serves me well, but we played some of the dives too, just to be clear. And I think that, made a huge difference to how I treat my clients because I was in a band for 15 years or 20 years, whatever it was. I can't even remember. And Canada is a huge country with sparsely populated. And the touring here is brutal.
Yeah, because sometimes you have to drive for 9.5 hours to get to your next gig.
Which we tortured Nickelback for sure.
Yes, that's very true. Let's talk about Harlequin a little. I obviously remember there was the one really big hit, Innocence, right? Yeah. Big hit. So who are you signed to? I don't even think I know that.
We were signed to Epic in Canada, Columbia in America. And it was close, but no cigar. We worked our butts off. We toured in America. We opened for Triumph down there, 2 tours. We opened for John Waite from the Babies. We gave it our best shot. We were not as successful as Loverboy or Bryan Adams, in the same vintage.
Well, not many people were.
No, no false modesty or whatever. I think we were a great band, and we certainly tried.
Who would have been in charge of Sony Canada then?
It was Rick Camilleri.
Oh yeah, I remember Rick.
And before that, it was that's a tough one. I should be able to remember this. I can't.
Do you remember who was in charge of Columbia then? Was it Yetnikoff? Or was he CBS?
It could have been. It could have been. We were produced by Jack Douglas, who had Cheap Trick, Aerosmith, John Lennon, and that was he found us in a club and took us to New York, in the record plant, and we were like kids, and we'd been doing it for 6 or 7 years already, slugging it out, schlepping from Winnipeg to Toronto, 24-hour drive. That's nice.
Man, oh man. That's funny. But it's funny what you said. It's interesting what you said about, your own experience as a touring band has affected how you do your job as an agent.
Absolutely. I was pitched a gig for Billy Talent the other day, and I said, from there to Louisville is 9.5 hours plus border crossing is not doable.
Yeah. And you knew from personal experience.
Yeah.
Well, I always say that too, because like, I spent years as an artist lawyer before I had a record company. And that definitely has colored how I treat artists on the label. Like, for example, how many times when I was an artist lawyer did I have to deal with A&R guys coming into a studio going, yeah, man, that sounds pretty good. Can you make it sound a little bit more like that song that's number 1 on the chart this week? Which is why 604 has a very strict no interference policy. We don't.
Which is awesome. And when I read the anniversary press release, it's 5 pages, by the way.
It is?
Yeah, I printed it. Yeah, I just thought I'd better do my homework. And I've had the privilege of working with a bunch of those bands.
Yep.
And you sign oddball bands. Hotel Mirror, I told you I saw the other night, like at Canadian Music Week, blew me away. They're not conventional.
No.
Marianas Trench, when I went to see them, they were playing at the Cameron House. There was like 11 people there.
I remember that.
And I was like, what is wrong with you guys? I love it.
When I played that for Chad Kruger, who's my partner on 604, when I played the demos to Chad of Marianas, he had this funny look on his face. And I said, what? And he said, I don't know, dude. Like, it's kind of like the Beach Boys meets the Foo Fighters. And I said, exactly. Exactly.
Brian Wilson. When we were at the agency group, Neil Warnock had been Brian Wilson's agent, and I introduced Josh to Neil Warnock, who's Pink Floyd's agent. So, and I said, and he's also been Brian Wilson's agent. You know Brian Wilson? I said, I had dinner with him last week. I thought he died and gone to heaven.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Hal Blaine Good Vibrations studio of Hal Blaine, the drummer? Good Vibrations it's on YouTube with the Beach Boys. It's just mind blowing.
Oh, I will.
There's about 30 parts to that song, which Marianas don't hesitate to do.
Yeah, so that's true. So you've been Mariana's agent since day one.
Not quite.
Oh, you're right. They were at Feldman.
Yeah.
For briefly with Rob Patty,
I'm not sure, but
God damn, it's a long time ago.
But when you see a band that's that talented, it was like, I got to do this. I have no idea what we're going to do. And you guys supported them. And I remember calling you and saying, like, there's no money, but we need to do this. And you were, okay, I guess I got to cough up.
Listen, I mean, it's been both, I suppose, a good thing about me and a bad thing about me is that when I believe in something, I have trouble letting go. And, Marianas is a great example of a band where I'm sure glad I didn't let go. Because I think when they were starting to make their second album, I think they were unrecouped to us probably close to $500,000.
I'm not surprised.
No, because we put them up in Toronto for 4 months.
We had to do that. I said, you got to come to Southern Ontario.
That's right.
Half the population of Canada lives between Windsor and Montreal.
Yep.
And, but there's more places to play, but there's more competition. And tough it out, boys.
Well, that's right. So, I mean, we went to radio. So we signed a band. We make this record. We thought it was a rock band. We went to rock radio. We didn't go to pop radio with that first album. We went to rock, and it didn't work. The rock stations were like, it's too pop. So we very quickly said, okay, well, let's try pop radio. It's too rock. And we really had a problem. And I believed in them so much. And I just refused to accept that this wasn't going to work. If they had been on a major label at that point, they would have been cut. I mean, 3 singles, none of them worked. And, I remember us having this kind of crisis meeting. And what's amazing is that would have been Julie and Kessie, both of whom are still at my company 20 years later. And, I remember us all sitting down kind of going, well, hold on a sec. What is working? Okay, radio's not working. Okay, let's accept that. What is working? Well, when they play shows, it works. People like them. Okay, what else is working? Well, online. the videos are working, and the clips, the funny clips they're doing are working. So we came up with a plan. We're going to send them to Ontario. We're going to rent a condo. They're going to live there for 3-4 months.
Duke it out.
With a video. I think I even bought them a video camera to make higher quality video stuff. And I said, you're going to play. You're going to meet other bands there. You're going to film clips. And by the time they came home 4 months later, we had a fan base.
Well, they're great musicians. I can't get by a band that can't play and sing. You know, that's a band that can play and sing.
Absolutely.
They're unusual for sure.
Yes.
And it was a passion project for me. You know that the dates that they've done post-pandemic are bigger than ever.
I'm very excited about, you know, and I've I don't want to talk about it here, but I've come up with a plan I think is going to,
okay, well,
I've got a
we'll talk about that.
great plan for
what my plan is, put that band or any band that is that good in front of people. People decide. People are more educated now. They've seen more shows. They've seen, you know, not everybody is seeing their first show.
No.
And they can tell the difference.
Yes. I think that's
maybe giving them too much credit, but I don't think so.
No, it's interesting. So, I mean, I guess the two biggest bands you and I have worked on together are Marianas and, of course, Nickelback. And, you know, it's funny. When I think of people who are still on the Nickelback team, you know, there's three of us who were there pretty close to the beginning. There's you, there's me, and there's Chief. Now, Chief was gone for a while. Chief went and did other things for a decade, basically. But, you know, I think I was probably the first on because I remember when we approached you, and I remember how excited we all were that you were coming out to see them play. And I have two recollections of you. One was at Music West, and it was when we had a bunch of A&R people in the room, and they played with, I think, Thornley, if I remember correctly.
Starfish.
Oh, and they did not play well.
No, there was
it was the other band was Flybanger, who actually ended up getting signed that night to Columbia, and Nickelback had a crap show.
Well, there was a technical. There was an electrical storm outside, and there was a DC surge went back through the monitors.
That's what happened.
It was a disaster. But I went back and said hi to the guys, and they were like, not based on what I saw tonight, but you deserve it. Like, that was horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so painful to watch a band because they had great songs.
Sure.
And they were good players, and it was a technical nightmare.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember us all being backstage and just sort of heartbroken. I mean, you know, when you're in the business for a longer amount of time, you know, and I always say this to our artists, like, you can't let the good things get you too high and you can't get the bad things get you too low. You got to keep an even keel. But I didn't know that then, at least, or
of course not.
At that time I was young and we were all so upset. Like, I just remember us all feeling so dejected in that bad. Yeah.
Looking down.
Exactly. Looking down and feeling like our career was over and feeling like it was all over, and it was nowhere near all over.
No, because they
was just beginning.
Yeah. I remember when I got the demo of How You Remind Me. I'm getting goosebumps right now talking about getting a demo.
Yeah.
And this is from Leader of Men to this, you know, but the band, I think we put them on tour for 16 months or some stupid thing. Like, it was brutal. It was torture.
Yeah. They used to go on the road for ridiculous.
Forever.
Yeah. Ridiculous. And that's why I've always over the years really, like, if people don't like their music, I don't care. I mean, who cares? Yeah, nobody likes everything. Like, it doesn't matter to me. It was the more personal attacks that always upset me. And especially when it was like, you know, corporate sellout rock. And it's like, you know what? They're the most do-it-yourself band I've ever worked with. Like, this was a band who basically the team was them and me, like, and you at a certain point. But it was like, nobody else gave a we were in the wilderness. Like, nobody cared about that band.
We put them on tour with whoever would take them.
Yep.
And they were making no money.
No money.
And they were just, I don't know how they did it, because but they did it. And
Because they believed in themselves.
right. And that endeared me. I mean, I was already all in anyway because I met them and they were nice people. I don't want to work with.
Neither do I.
Sorry,
Neither do I.
And everybody's entitled to their opinion, and artists are artists. And some of them are, high strung, and that's where the talent comes in. But when the bands just say please and thank you and good job, Ralph, it means a lot.
Well, look, I mean, even look at how they were when they got inducted to the Hall of Fame at the Junos. Like, I'm as jaded as it gets, man. I'm so jaded about that stuff. And I'm going to be honest, I teared up. I cried a little that night. I was watching it at home with my wife and kids. And when Chad, I think you and I were number 1 and 2 in who got thanked. And what was so interesting about Chad's thank you was how much he emphasized these guys were with us from the beginning. These guys believed in us when nobody believed in us. The fact that to them, they still hold on to that's still the thing that they value, kind of says a lot about them.
It says an incredible amount about them. They still say please and thank you.
Yep.
They're appreciative of their position, and they're their own worst critics. I've seen them back.
Yep.
This tour is going phenomenally well. I mean, selling all the tickets every night, and they're still beating themselves up about technical problems, and and not beating themselves up, but they're still like they still want to be. They want to improve. They want to be better.
Well, people sometimes are like, I can't believe they still have explosions and they still have fire and who does that anymore? And the thing though is that like people don't always understand is like Chad cares and they all do care so much about the fans' experience. It matters to them. They could save some money by not having all that stuff. But you know what? I remember Chad and this has got to be 15 years ago, Chad being like, when I used to go to shows when I was a kid, like if they didn't have the full show, I was disappointed. I never want any of our fans to ever walk out feeling disappointed. I want them to walk out remembering that show the way I remember seeing, whoever, Kiss, like, when I was in high school.
My first show was in the Winnipeg Arena, Herman's Hermits and the Who opening for them.
Wow.
And the
Who opening for Herman's?
Yeah. They got kicked off.
What's wrong with this picture?
No, they got kicked. They smashed the out of their equipment.
Yeah.
And the place went, there was a riot. Like, people were so excited because they'd heard about the band smashing.
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And anyway, that was, okay, this is showbiz, folks.
Yeah.
There are different approaches. Every band has a different approach. But entertainment, I said this to you earlier, when the house lights come on and people are high-fiving and hugging each other and big smiles and going, we got our money's worth tonight. What's wrong with that?
Yep. Exactly right. So yeah, no, listen, it's what a ride for both of us with this band. It's really hard to believe. I'm in my 30th year. 30 years.
26 or 27.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think you were when did you start? Were you the agent for the state?
Yes. Yeah.
But before the Roadrunner signing or?
Yeah. Yeah.
I have this real distinct memory of you at a show at the Plaza of Nations. And God damn it, is that right? I think that was the last show of the state tour. I think.
It would have been Breakout West or Music West. Maybe.
Something like that. They had just been touring for like a year. I hadn't seen them for a year.
Well, they went out. They did 7 cities in Ohio and visited every radio station. Like, there are other bands that work that hard. Billy Talent works that hard. The Trues worked that hard. 54, but Nickelback was an uphill climb. Like they were first of 4 on tour with bands and stuff. It was Creed, and there was no stopping them. You're tearing up.
It's it's emotional for me. Like it's really, like I don't know. It's funny because that kind of leads me to like, you know why I called the podcast I Hate Simkin? Do you know why?
No.
So Mike Kruger I'm already laughing because when they would play the MMVAs, the Much Music Video Awards, this is back when people loved Much Music. And it was a big deal.
When it existed.
Yeah, and it was a big deal. I mean, and they must have played the MMVAs every year for like 7-8 years. And Mike wore the same T-shirt every single time. I hate Simkin.
Yeah.
To this day, I don't know why. I loved it. I thought it was funny.
He wore it at the Junos once too.
Wore it at the Junos. And so that was one of the reasons I called it that. And then the other reason was Mike was on an airplane when he lived in Hawaii. Mike was on an airplane coming back to Vancouver. And a manager who you know, but I don't want to say their name on here. A manager who you know was on the plane just by fluke. And at some point he came up to Mike and said, You're Mike from Nickelback, right? And he's like, yeah. So you know Jonathan Simkin? Mike's like, yeah, of course. He's our lawyer. He said, man, that guy's a And Mike said, yeah, but he's our So I had Mike as my first guest on the podcast.
Awesome.
But,
Mike is an amazing guy.
He sure is.
And the other night in Calgary, his bass sound, I've never heard a better bass sound.
Oh, nice.
And I'm a bass player.
Yeah.
Well, I was a bass player. When we got to open for them at the fire aid thing in Fort McMurray, Dawson and he were my bass roadies.
Nice. Yeah, no, Mike's an incredible. I mean, it's funny about that band is all four of them are really lovely people, but in very different ways. They're also very different people, like
it's remarkable. And it works.
And I think part of the reason it works so well is that with the exception of Daniel, the other three have known each other. I mean, well, obviously Chad and Mike are brothers, so they grew up together. Ryan was I think they've known him since grade 1.
Since he was 5, whatever.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like that, so they fight like family, but they also make up like family and cover each other's back like family. Yeah. It's pretty wild. But here's a question. Like part of the reason I called it I Hate Simkin was, I don't want this to be about me, but it was supposed to be a springboard to conversation, which is, would you agree with the assertion that I've been a polarizing figure in the music business?
You do whatever you want and people off.
Well, that's my question. Why do you think I'm a polarized? Like, why do you think I'm I don't think I'm a bad person. I don't think I'm but boy, I've wondered for a long time sort of why.
I'm not on social media.
Yeah.
I have young people that work with me that tell me what's going on. I would hear, Simkin went off last night.
Oh, no.
I mean, 604 has been distributed by everybody. And
True.
So you're bound to make some, you say what you think.
I think that's a lot to do with it.
Well, and the Junos, that was one that came to me. Hey, look, did you see this? Well, I happen to agree with you. I just wouldn't say.
Well, I had a lot of people email me saying I would never have said it.
Yeah.
But you know what the funny thing is about that was it wasn't even what people thought. Like that was a very specific tweet about something very specific that happened. It wasn't because if you look at our company, we're about the most diverse record company in Canada, both in terms of staffing and in terms of the bands. Like we have all sorts of, my staff, I don't know how many people we have from the LGBTQ community working here, but a lot higher than the average and the thing is, I've never done that intentionally. I was never out to have a diverse company. I just don't give a I don't care what color you are. I don't care who you're as long as you're not children or dogs. And the problem with something like Twitter, and I made a mistake. The mistake I made was, there's no context in Twitter. You make a statement and people who don't know you just see the statement for what it is. And then they're like, oh, Simkin, what a racist. I'm like, I was a refugee lawyer. I've made law in this country on behalf of refugees. I was a poverty lawyer. The woman who runs my company is black and I hired her 19 years ago. Like, what the But I made a mistake. I said something without context. And then, we live in an age where people are looking to get angry. They want to get angry. And I gave them good reason to get angry, and that was tough. That was one of the toughest things I've ever had to sort of live through. Again, because it was, well, I should probably finish the story. Like, what that tweet was actually about was a Theory of a Dead Man, ironically, because that was the year the Junos were in Vancouver.
Right.
Vancouver Junos. Theory of a Dead Man had the biggest hit of their career that year, RX. They were #1 in the US for 7 weeks. What an accomplishment, 18 years into your career. So I did what you do when you work with a band. I was all over the Junos about getting them on the show. Vancouver band, Vancouver Junos, Vancouver label. Come on, they deserve to be on that show. Nope, because that was right after the Harvey Weinstein thing had happened. And everybody was like, and I don't want to say who, but somebody, one of the people running the show said to me, and I quote, "Sorry, man, bad year to be 4 white guys." That's what my tweet was about. I wasn't making some general statement about the world. I was off that, I've never treated people differently because of what color they are. And to have my band treated differently because of what color they were really upset me. I'm like, what are we doing here? What are we doing with this show? Like, if the idea isn't based on achievement, then what are we doing?
On merit.
Merit and achievement. I mean, yes, right.
On merit.
So that's all that was about. I wasn't making I have no problem with people getting on the show, and people getting a chance who wouldn't normally get a chance. But I guess what hurt so much about it was, do you know how many people of color I've empowered? How many artists of color I've empowered?
But it was based on merit.
But to get dragged for being racist, it's like, what? And I think that's why I kind of died out pretty quick, because there was nothing there. I mean, there was just nothing there.
Seymour Stein, who started Sire Records, signed Madonna, the Talking Heads, Katie Lang, the Replacements. He was at Canadian Music Week, and in the morning he nodded off in the lobby of the hotel. He was at the Rivoli at midnight seeing a band. He's Seymour Stein. You're saying we don't need old white dudes there. You know what I mean? Nobody said that, but they were like, what do we have? He's one of the greatest record company guys of all time.
Yep. Well, I mean, it is interesting. Like,
social media is an amazing tool, and it's a huge problem for me. When Harlequin did a surprise opening set at the Junos in Winnipeg for Thornley at the Zoo, and every rock band for 40 years had played there. I went into the late Chuck Green's office, and I've told this story many times, but Ralph, I see you're not on Facebook. I said, no, I'm not. Neither am I. I said, but all our bands are, your club is. Like, that's how we're not buying ads in the local papers anymore.
Yeah.
I said, Chuck, you're killing me. Why aren't you on Facebook? I'm not looking for any new friends.
Yeah, exactly.
But he said, but we use it for what is. But people get hung up on it. I mean, this TikTok has benefited many bands. It's also, I've gone to see artists that have huge numbers. They can't play.
Yep.
Some can, but they've never played on a stage before.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that part of the business has sure changed.
I'm old-fashioned. Can you count to 4, tune your instruments, sing, write good songs, and actually entertain people?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's pretty funny. But I do agree with that. Like, I think part of the reason I think this company has succeeded is because I didn't come from the music business. I mean, I didn't even take copyright in law school. I mean, that wasn't my plan. I was a criminal lawyer and a refugee lawyer, and I enjoyed doing it. So when I started this company, when I got into the music business, I didn't have that baggage. Because like most people who do the kind of jobs we do are people who are musicians like yourself. Nothing wrong with that. Like Chris Taylor, right? He was in a band.
I booked one.
He booked one. He booked his band. So, I mean, when they decided to get into the business side of things, they had expectations. They had baggage from the business. I didn't even know what the music business was.
I definitely did. But I think it was good baggage.
Yep.
Because half the promoters are still the same guys. The venues are still the same, But you're right, though. And that's interesting. I never thought about that with you.
Well, sure. I mean, even think of the first deal Chad and I ever did was, we did the deal with Randy Lennox for distribution in Canada. And I was able to keep digital out of the deal. And, at the time, it wasn't so much that because remember, that's before streaming, that's before Spotify. The download store had just started. So it was right when the download store started. And I remember saying to Randy Lennox, he's like, well, I don't understand. What's your problem? Why can't you just, I said, Randy, I'll happily pay you to do things for me I can't do for myself. I know how to use iTunes Producer. It's not hard. You put an MP3 on it's like, it's not a hard thing to do. And he begrudgingly said yes.
You had leverage.
I had some leverage. I've always understood leverage. That's something that's
leverage is leverage.
Leverage is leverage. But to me, it just made no sense. Like everybody gave up their digital on those deals, but there was no way I was going to do it because it made no sense to me. Common sense.
We gave up our publishing back in the 70s and 80s to get tour support in America.
Yep.
It's criminal stuff that we.
And that was the stuff that drove me crazy. And I remember doing a deal with Graham Henderson. It was one of the first deals I ever did. And, people won't know who that is. Graham's a respected attorney who has done a lot. He was an attorney for bands. Then he was in-house at Universal. Then he was the head of Music Canada. What's that?
Margot Timmins.
He married Margot Timmins. There's another accomplishment. Yes. And I was doing one of my first deals I ever did. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Lowest of the Low. And I was representing LSD Records. It's long before 604. And, Graham's Graham. He was, a bit condescending to me. And I understand why. I was upshot. Like I didn't really know what I was doing. I remember him.
Putz.
What's that? A putz? Is it? Yeah. So he's saying to me like, he's like, he said, look, don't take this wrong, but it's like, my clients aren't going to be very happy that I'm spending half my time teaching you about the music business. He's like, listen, this is I can't remember what we were fighting about, but he's like, that's just the way it's done. It's just standard practice. And I said, okay, Graham, well, guess what? Slavery was once standard practice. And somehow that made the rounds, like that comment of mine, sort of.
Before social media.
Before social media. But it was that kind of thing, I think, that got me my reputation early in my career.
Graham helped us set up the agency group in Canada. When I got fired from Feldman, Jack Ross and I started, we're going to start our own agency. And not long after that, Neil Warnock called. Hello, this is actually Neil Warnock. And he helped us put the deal together. And we had no clue what we were doing.
Well, you seem to have had some clue.
It worked out.
Given how things worked out.
I believe, notwithstanding the other revenue streams, that the live music business is, notwithstanding also the pandemic that happened where we canceled tours. The Nickelback tour that is happening right now was booked in 2019 initially.
Yep.
Billy Talent tour booked 5 times.
Ugh.
Before it was even announced. But it's about live to me. People will pay to see the bands that they want to see.
Yep.
And, you can trash Ticketmaster all you want, but when 6 million people hit Taylor Swift's ticket thing in 5 minutes, what are you supposed to,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a shareholder in Ticketmaster, but when we refunded the Nickelback money in 2020, everybody got their money back.
Yep.
You can't say that was secondary ticketing. Yeah,
that was brutal because that was supposed to be the 15th anniversary of All the Right Reasons. And of course, now, you can only have one 15-year anniversary.
Just make it up.
I could have the 18th year anniversary, I guess. But that was heartbreaking. That was tough. That was about the lowest point.
I think 5440, we did 40th anniversary tour for 3 years. Kiss has been on the farewell tour for...
Yeah, for
20 years.
For 20 years. So let's talk a little bit about like your most recent move, because here you are all these years later and you're still making moves. You just recently took, you were APA Canon, and very, very recently, like in the last couple of weeks, you've now moved over to Pecan. How's that been so far? I know it's early, but
it's phenomenal. They're nice people.
Yes, they're nice people.
And I grew up in Winnipeg. That's where they're from. They say please and thank you. I hate to harp on that, but we structured a deal that allowed us to make the move without any disruption. All my bands came with me. I think when I called Chief, he said, "What's your point?"
Like, why are you even telling me?
No, I said, "I'm sure you've heard the rumors." Yeah. I think Billy Talent said, "Oh."
Yeah.
Whatever.
So did Mariana's. Nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody.
I didn't take it for granted.
No, of
And
course
I called
not.
you right away.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
You know, because there are other opportunities that artists can have, but I love the artists I work with. You know, I mean, I actually care about them.
Yep.
I don't have to take their calls in the middle of the night because I'm not their manager,
But you take them.
but I take them anyway.
Well, that's something about you which always makes me laugh is that you and I both seem to be the people who are always awake. You know, like I'll email you at like, I don't know, like it'll be, 3 a.m. here, which means it's 6 a.m.
And I respond
And you
immediately.
respond right away.
Sleep is for humans.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Anyway, you know what? I'm still excited to I'm energized more than I've ever been.
Oh, that's great.
You know, and Vinny Cincomani was Harlequin's agent. He's there. And now he's got a bunch of Bruce and Sam's bands. And anyway, it's another chapter.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I do think about retiring from time to time, but
Then what would you do?
well, that's right. And that's what my wife says too. It's like, I think she'd almost be more scared of having me sort of with nothing else to do. I mean, there's a few things I could do, but the thing is, I still like it. I mean, I really do. And as much as it's changed, I still enjoy it. I still wake up and want to go to work. And I know so many people who do not feel that way about their life and their job.
I wake up with booking nightmares.
Yes.
What if we? Okay, I got an idea. Yeah, and dealing with other parts of the world is, if you're a guy who doesn't sleep much, it comes in handy.
It does come in handy, and I think
Australia booking, trying to get Nickelback figured out in Australia, so you can do it anytime. Those people work anytime. They work on North American hours. They also work on their own hours.
well, that's one reason I like being an entrepreneur and not having a boss. Really, I don't think it would have worked for me if I had somebody looking over my shoulder and counting beans.
You would not listen.
No, I wouldn't listen anyway. I just have always sort of marched to my own drummer.
You do listen when it's presented on this Marianas thing just recently. I said, I don't think we should do it. And you're like, why?
Well, I mean, I think part of being a good manager and or just business person is like, there's nothing wrong with having strong opinions. In fact, it's great to have strong opinions, but it's worse to have strong opinions to the point where you don't listen to what other people are saying. And I've developed that's taken some time for me to develop that, to really value the people around me and the value of having people around me who I trust. And I do ask opinions all the time, even if I do feel strongly about something.
I wouldn't contradict you unless I was sure.
Yep.
That I was.
And vice versa. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've done that to me.
Yes.
No, Ralph, I completely disagree.
Yep.
Okay.
And then you talk it out. You sort of figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like, what was the thing we were talking about? I think it was a Marianas show in Calgary, where there was a bit of a, well, I don't know, and should we, and shouldn't we? And the truth is, there's nothing wrong with not being sure. If you're not sure about something, you should make the inquiries you need to make to become sure. And so you ask questions. What do you think, Ralph? What do you think, Josh?
And then Julie sent me back to grind it out.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. Yeah, Julie, she's
fantastic.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, she's been with me with 604 for 20 years. 20 years. I'm really proud of how many people have been here. Like she's 20 years. Kessie's 19 years. Jenna's 15 years.
Lorraine Webb, my assistant.
She's been with you
27
forever.
years.
Wow. That's crazy.
Think about that for a second. Sitting 12 feet away from me for 27 years.
Yeah, that's something, man.
Not the easiest guy to get along with some days.
Yeah, and I would say the same about myself. So, hopefully it's a testament to something. I don't know what exactly, but
when every time there's a change that happens in the agency business, people go, Ralph's going to retire. Then what would I do? My spilkus would be out of control.
Well, what would you do? Go up to the cottage
and And then do what?
Yeah.
I fish every morning and then get on the computer.
I have mixed feelings about it though, right? Because like, I've become pretty friendly with Bruce Allen. And, on one level, I have nothing but respect for the guy. I mean, what a career. I mean, the guy's 7.
He's got 3 bands in the top Polestar box office right now. Bublé, Adams, and The Offspring.
And he's 78. I mean, it's pretty amazing. So there's sometimes I'll talk to him and be like, you know what? I'm going to do what he's doing. I'm going to just keep going. And then there's times I go, oh God, like maybe I want a little peace before I kick off the planet, like maybe there'd be something to be said for actually having a little peace and quiet in my life. But
people, go, well, you could travel. I've traveled.
Yeah, that doesn't interest me.
All over the world.
I'm not interested in that at this point. If I was going to do something else, it'd probably be try to write a book or, maybe I teach at UBC Law School a lot. I enjoy that teaching.
Oh yeah, you're doing that, right?
Yep. So that's something I enjoy doing, but I don't know. There's
that
something.
Gets you up.
Yes. But I none of it is as much of a thrill as
breaking a record.
Yeah, driving home and your band comes on the radio. Like that's still to me like holy all these years later, and it's still exciting. Like it's still a big thrill.
I hear my band on the radio 40 years ago.
Your band like Harlequin? Yeah.
Sounds pretty good to this day.
Yep.
Jack Douglas, the producer, was a master in the studio.
Yes.
He worked with all the biggest producers, as an engineer. And it doesn't sound like what the production is currently available, but it doesn't sound that bad. Yeah. I still get a buzz from that.
So what year would that have been?
79, 80, 81, 82.
Wow. Which totally makes sense because I was in grade 9 and that's when I started going to those kinds of concerts. That's when I discovered marijuana and going to concerts.
And now it's legal. Yeah. Can you believe that?
Do I want to admit this? I never buy it legally anyway. So to me, nothing's changed.
No, I think this gambling on sports, on baseball is worse, a bigger problem than. It's
pretty interesting, isn't it? Because like it's hard now to watch anything from Hockey Night in Canada to anything when the first thing you see are these commercials and
changing the line in the second period. That the odds are now this, and people are. I was with a bunch of guys the other night in Montreal, and they were changing their bets. Are you watching the game?
Yeah, it's weird. I'm sure glad that. I mean, I've had issues with substance abuse, but so I have a bit of an addictive personality. But thank Christ, I've never been into gambling because boy, oh boy, it's. That's the one area where
they can't advertise pot on TV, but they can advertise every bet 365 every intermission in baseball, hockey.
Yeah,
that doesn't whatever.
Yeah. No, it's a bit much. Where do you see the future of the business going now? Like, is that something you think about or just?
Well, rock's been dead 12 times in my life already.
Yes, and yet here we are.
Yeah.
And here stands Nickelback.
I think people's attention span, because of social media, is so limited that you can be here today, gone later today, which was, I think Van Halen or somebody said that. I'm not sure, but I know that the live experience is still phenomenal. Like artists that can actually put on a show, entertain people. People crave that. The shows I've been to the last 2 weeks, just absolute younger audience, smiles on their faces, put their money down, bought their ticket, bought the $12 beers, bought a T-shirt. The live experience seems to be stronger than ever.
Yeah, and you've got the advantage over me because I haven't seen the new Nickelback show. You've seen it a bunch of times now. So can I expect explosions?
Yeah, it done. Not like for no reason. They have videos. I'm not gonna. The set is super well paced.
Nice.
They can play and sing and count to 4.
Yes, they sure can. Yeah, that's funny what you said about when you first heard the demo for How You Remind Me, because The first time I heard that song was in the studio when they were recording with Rick Parasher here in Vancouver in Greenhouse. And Chad just played it for us. I think it was me. If I remember correctly, it was me, Peak, and somebody else. Can't remember who it was. It wasn't.
You own Greenhouse, probably.
Maybe it was Bruce. So we were all sitting there and Chad played it. And I remember us all looking at each other going, I think that's a keeper.
I have a demo disc of it, a CD disc of the demo.
Make sure you keep that. That could be an eBay treasure.
It's not for sale.
Not for sale. Yeah, I still have a bunch of funny old Nickelback stuff. Like I have the demo they gave me the first time I met them. The first time they came to see me was because they had a management offer from Clyde and Terry. And they came to see me at my old office. And I said, oh, do you have any music I could listen to? And of course they did. They had a burned CD. I still have it with somebody's scroll, Nickelback, on the on the front of it. Same thing, not for sale.
They came to our office in Toronto when the agency group was just fledgling, took their shoes off, rinsed out their coffee cups. You know, I was like, what would my mother say? These are good people.
See, my experience was a little bit different because the first time, and Chad, when I tell the story, Chad doesn't like it because he doesn't remember it this way, but I remember it. They came into my old office. I had an office in the Dominion building, which is an old building in Vancouver at Cambie and Hastings. And that was where my first law office was. And they came in to see me and they all sat in chairs right in front of my desk. And Chad actually leaned back and put his foot up on my desk. And I said, what are you doing? He said, oh, is that not good? I said, no, that's not good. He said, okay, sorry. So he apologized. Sorry. So my first impression was like, but the funny thing is, so they gave me this, we have this meeting, they give me the CD, they, nice to meet you. I'll look at the contract and call you back. And they all leave. And, I walked into my wife's office, who people don't know, my wife's a lawyer as well. And we used to practice law together. And I walked into her office with the CD in my hand. And I said, I hope I like this because there's something about these guys. Yeah. Like even in that first meeting, there was just something about them. And largely Chad, because he's one of those guys, as you know, that, he walks into a room and for whatever reason, magnet for attention. Like everybody is drawn to that guy. And that I knew right away that they had that X factor.
Which is so rare.
So rare. So when I heard that music and went, okay.
Likewise.
Yeah. I'm like, they got all the pieces.
This is just going to be a make-work project of a mega proportions. But they were willing to put the work in.
And I'd say the same thing about Ramsey. First time and it's funny because Josh was funny. He used to drop off demos at my law office. I remember I still have some of those demos too. And, he'd write these insane songs. He still does, but like, it was like songs that didn't even have repeating choruses and stuff. Like it'd be this like 9-minute song that like, but within that 9 minutes, there'd be these moments of just incredible genius. And I remember saying to him, if you can sort of
condense it,
come back to the more traditional verse chorus thing, I think there's something.
But now the albums are epics. It's genius.
A genius, and also a lovely guy. So I mean, that's, another band where the success didn't turn them into jerk offs, because I find with success, it's funny, isn't it? Like, in my experience, at least, when bands get really, really successful, it goes one of two ways. Sometimes they almost become nicer than they were. They almost become nicer. And I think that's because some of the pressure's off. Like with Chad, he was never not a nice person. Chad was always a nice person, but he had a bit of a chip on his shoulder when I first met him. And I think when they had that success, it's like, goodbye to the chip. I thought I was awesome. Now the world has confirmed that I'm awesome and I can relax a little bit. Whereas then you get other people who have success and they just become monsters, either through how they treat women or how they treat, I don't know. Like, it's funny. It's funny how some people have some success and it's the worst thing that ever happens to them.
There's so few people that actually have major success, but the people that can appreciate the success that they have had and deal with it and not be envious of the people that have had more success can have long careers.
I agree. And I mean, I always say, like people say, like, what's your definition of being successful in the music business? Pretty simple. You pay your rent with your career.
Right.
Everything else is a bonus, you know, like, because not that many people can pay their rent with their music career, you know?
It's even harder now.
And it's even harder now, you know? Yeah, it's funny in business now because it's like, on the one hand, there's way more entry points. Like when I first started, you know, 30 years ago, if you weren't on a major label, that was going to be pretty tough. I mean, they controlled relationships with radio. They controlled the retail accounts. Some of them even controlled the CD manufacturing plants. I mean, remember that CD manufacturing plant inside of EMI?
Well, CBS, when we signed them, had, that's on Eglinton and Don Mills. The pressing plant was right there.
Right. Right. So, I mean, if you weren't, I mean, that's why I remember when the Bare Naked Ladies put out Gordon, it was because they were independent. And that was like one of the first times an independent record actually charted. But it was many years later. I mean, it was really Napster that kind of changed everything. You know, it's pretty interesting now. Like this business is.
But the cost of touring, the cost of living now, if you don't have some source of income, a day job, a benefactor of some sort, Jonathan Simkin, to help you get through it, is tough.
It's tough. It's tough. But, you know, for the people who wanted this as a career.
Why would you not, you know, once you either, if you're in, you're in. And then people, I always say to people, you can have music as a hobby. You can play piano at the, you know, family functions.
Yep.
You can play in a weekend band at the local pub and not have the grief. But if you're going for it, Paul McCartney's 80, he's on tour. The Stones.
Still touring. Who's still touring?
And they don't suck.
Nope. Well, it's funny, isn't it, too? Because, like, you know, I think about people like, I don't know, like Brian House, who, I mean, that guy struggled and struggled and struggled. And when he finally hit with that Hinder song, you know, it was like, good for you, man. Because, I mean, how many people would have just kept at it and, you know, have enough faith that eventually something's going to work? You know, and those are always the nicest stories for me when it's like, you know, and Nickelback is a condensed version of that.
Well, the overnight success thing.
Yeah, nobody's an overnight success.
Any steps that you miss, you have to go back and take them again.
Yeah, and even somebody like Carly Rae Jepsen, who everybody thought like was an overnight success. It's like, well, hold on a sec. We had a record in Canada that we worked our ass off on and, you know, had some success with.
Right.
But, you know, so, you know, a lot of people may have only heard of her because of Call Me Maybe, but she had been at it for, she was on Canadian Idol. I mean,
Colin Lewis was booking her.
Right.
And
I remember.
And we thought she, you know, she's got a chance.
Yep.
And then she snaps one. And she's out there working it hard again.
She is. She just played Glastonbury last weekend.
You know.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. Like it's pretty amazing. So, you know, a lot of heartbreak stories, but then there's a lot of great stories too in this business.
No kidding.
You know, it's, yeah.
You can't dwell on the negative.
No.
It's good to keep it in mind because there are disasters out there.
100%.
I've had a couple of bands that I believed in tremendous, that they were, and they got A&R to death. You know, take a rock band, turn it into a pop band. And
yeah.
And just, you know, were they going to make it anyway? I don't know. But when you see what's, you know, people interfering in the creative aspect of it, like you let your artists do whatever they want.
Like it's not because I'm a nice guy. Like I that is ultimately a business decision, and a common sense decision. Because it's like, how many times have I had, like, remember Lyrics?
Oh yeah.
So, you know, I get them signed to Maverick. It was one of I think the first band I really managed. You know, Madonna signs them. I mean, you know, hey, and you know, we're signing them because, you know, they write great songs. And the very first thing they do when we go down there to LA for the first thing is, we want you to write with so-and-so.
Yeah.
Like, for God's sake, why did you sign us? Why did you sign us if you didn't like what we were?
Right.
I never understood that mentality. It's like, you know, and I always tell our bands this, once I sign you, you've passed the audition. The audition's over. You don't have to audition anymore. Now go make your record. Your job's to make it. My job's to sell it. 2 different jobs.
With a band like Marianas, they spend countless weeks, months in the studio.
Yeah.
So you have to support that.
Yes.
But you have the studio. When you put this shop together the way you did it, it was like truly 604.
Now everybody's doing it. Now they're all copying me. Universal's got their studio in their place, and Dynalone. Joel was funny though. When Joel Carrier built that Dynalone building in Toronto, he actually did call me and say, "Hey man, I got to do something like what you did." And I said, where are you doing it? And he's in Toronto. I said, "God bless you. Just stay out of Vancouver."
Well, the creative process is what keeps me going. So.
Yeah. And me as well. In fact, funny enough, one of your bands is in our studio today. Fake Shark.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So when we turn off the mic, we'll go say,
okay, let's go see them.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, I don't know. I think we've said everything we can say. Ralph, I really, really appreciate you doing this. You've always been a hero to me. And, I can say that honestly, you're somebody I respect a great deal. And I don't respect a lot of people in this business,
I
but
didn't swear too much.
You didn't swear too much. You can, if you want to go crazy now, feel free. There, I've covered the ground there, but no, I really, really do appreciate you doing this. And
my first podcast.
Listen,
It'll be my last too.
You think so? You've said it all. No, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to seeing Nickelback with you tomorrow night. And yeah, well, I guess we'll see you next time on the I Hate Simkin podcast. Any last words?
Simkin.
And you're confirming again that you hate Simkin.
I absolutely hate Simkin.
Love it. I appreciate it. And
with all sincerity.
And the thing is, I hate myself. So it's really, it works out well that way.
Cheers.
You hate Simkin. She hates Simkin. We hate Simkin.